expressed on the following program are those of the host and not necessarily those of staff, management, or ownership.
Phoenix, Arizona. This is Brother Mike back on the radio. Welcome to Filthy Fridays. Thank you for your time and thanks for tuning in to the radio program. Today's Bible study, taxes for churches. My prediction came true. Bad news rising today on Hardcore. Call somebody quickly and tell them the radio program's on, particularly if they're a pastor of a church. The devil's coming for us, folks. Hey, this is Brother Mike. I'm the professional counselor at the Arizona Deliverance Center on 15th Avenue, just south of Osborne Road in Central Phoenix. HardcoreChristianity.com website. We have all of our ministry services there. We have 2 live services every week, 7 p.m. Mountain Time, Thursday night and Friday night. My teaching service is at 7 p.m. on Fridays for my radio listeners. On the website, you can see, you can sign up for our next free seminar. You can catch the radio archives. You can sign up for or hit the PayPal button and send us another donation. Thank you so much for supporting us for the last 16 years. Sister Karen's on page 1, the homepage of the website. She'd be happy to list your house for you and loves working with born-again Christians. And thank you so much for your previous referrals. It's been fantastic. Thank you for your prayers and your support of the ministry. May God richly bless you. Taxes on churches. Check it out. Started my radio program in February of 2002. I was on KXXT Christian Radio at the time. And over the years, I made several predictions about the future. Not from God, just from my own mind. And believe it or not, I've hit all of them right on the money. I have not had the timing right on some of the predictions, but I hit them all right anyway. For example, back in 2003, I did a radio program on homosexuality, and I said within 10 years, homosexuality would be just like another thing in America. I was right, but I was wrong about the timing. It was a few more years after that when homosexuality became legal for them to marry and so on. I also made the same predictions about transgendered. I've also got other predictions on the table, different radio programs about polygamy, pedophilia, all this stuff. Well, one of the things I predicted was going to happen back in 2007 was churches were going to start getting taxed by the federal government. In 2007, many of these rotten, corrupt, low self-esteem, low moral integrity issues-driven TV preachers started to get called into the Senate. They started to do an evaluation of these televangelists and all these crooks stealing money from people and spending it on mansions, limousines, and fancy jets. Well, who in God's name is going to take money from somebody who doesn't have any money or has very little money, somebody on a fixed income, and take that money and spend it on a mansion or a limousine or a golden toilet? What in God's holy name do you think you're doing? What are you, nuts? Have you completely lost your mind? Have you totally lost your mind? Well, they had, and the Senate started to look into it after years of staggering abuse. That was in 2007. Well, by 2011, the whole thing had blown over. The lobbyists for these televangelists were so powerful, the Senate agreed to dismiss it and let it go. And I predicted back then that because of the abuses of these rot-gut TV preachers who steal money left and right and spend it on luxury items, and they live in the lack of luxury like Hollywood celebrities. And when I opened my ministry at the House of Healing and later the Arizona Deliverance Center, I went the exact opposite direction. I donated 100% of my salary to the ministry. I never took a salary. To this day, I've never taken a salary. Why? Well, I want to be the opposite of these crooked, lying, thieving televangelists. They're all a bunch of lying, thieving crooks, practically all of them, literally. It's really scary. Well, Brother Mike, you're being kind of critical. No, I'm not. I'm just stating what I already know for a fact. Many of these people have come to see me for counseling. Their relatives and family members have come to see me for counseling. I get the inside scoop on televangelism, mass media, all these megachurch pastors. People come to me. Of course, it's kept in confidentiality, and I get the inside stories on how all this process works. Well, my prediction has come true. Check this out. Quote, churches and nonprofit organizations are calling for the repeal of a provision in the GOP's tax cut laws that would force ministries to file federal tax returns and in some cases pay taxes. Last winter, as lawmakers touted the tax savings in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, no one mentioned a new federal tax on local churches. But for nonprofits like Christian ministries, that little-known provision in the legislature has become a big cause of concern. This article came out, I think, 3 days ago. And this thing's shocking. And guess what? It's going to hit for 2018 and 2019. Quote, today, senators on both sides of the aisle appealed to the Department of Treasury and the IRS to delay implementing the law until a myriad of questions surrounding it can be answered and nonprofits can better prepare. Quote, requiring these organizations to pay a federal tax on their employee benefits, something they've never been required to do before, will cause them to not only face an increased operating cost, but also an administrative burden by filing the 990T forms. Now, these are senators who are Republican. These are senators who are Democrats who are trying to get this thing taken out of Trump's new tax law, so to speak. Everybody is scared. And because of the excesses of televangelism back in 2007, 2008, 2009, when all these horrible things came to light of what these TV preachers were spending the money on, I made a radio prediction back then that, listen, when people see these abuses of nonprofits, and you look at all these scandals that have come out with the Red Cross and all these other nonprofit organizations that have been blowing money left and right on luxuries and fancy hotels and fancy trips and first-class plane rides, all this other stuff that's gone on. And in fact, just a few scandals came out just a few days ago. I knew that these abuses were going to attract the federal government and that our tax-exempt status, which is what the Arizona Deliverance Center has, along with hospitals and certain schools, and there's all kinds of thousands of different types of nonprofit organizations here in America. Guess what? They're being taxed now. For example, if you employ someone in your facility, your nonprofit organization, church or no, hospital or no, whatever, and you have a certain number of employees and you meet the criteria for the 990T forms, you have to pay tax on the financial equivalent benefit of a parking space. Yeah, did you hear me? You've got to pay taxes. That means if you get a free parking space at the church or the hospital, there's an economic value to a parking space. Yeah, no kidding. There are parking garages all over downtown Phoenix. Phoenix is one of the biggest cities in the United States and one of the wealthiest and most powerful cities in America. And the business climate here is powerful. The real estate market is very strong. There are parking garages all over downtown. Hospitals all have parking garages, and many of them charge for those spots to park. Well, if you go over to a church that meets the criteria for the 990T form, and you're parking there for free, you're now going to have to be taxed for an equivalent benefit of that parking spot, for example. Can you imagine that? Statistically, there's 15 million employees that work in the United States for nonprofit organizations, 15 million of them. That's nearly 10% of the workforce in the United States. You know what that plays out to, theoretically, 15 million parking spaces. Well, if you figure out what the value of those 15 million parking spaces, you could be looking at billions of dollars in taxes here. Can you imagine that? And the IRS hasn't even calculated what the value of the parking space is. So that means that a nonprofit organization, a hospital or a church, is going to have to hire an accountant or pay their current accountant extra money to figure out the value of those benefits to their hired employees so they can fill out the Form 990T. Can you imagine that? Now, at the Arizona Deliverance Center, we're not covered by this law because we don't have any employees. Everybody that works there is a volunteer, including myself, including my wife. We all volunteer our service to the Lord. We're not in it for the money. We're in it to see people healed and delivered. We're in it to genuinely and sincerely serve the Lord. This isn't a money-making venture for any of us. And so we do not fall under the law since we don't have employees, quote unquote. You have to technically be covered, you have to have a certain number of employees who are on the payroll and are eligible to have to pay the parking space tax. It's unbelievable, friends, but this is only the beginning. Okay? It's only the beginning. It's going to get worse, and Brother Mike's making another prediction. This is only the beginning. They're going to tax parking spots. They're going to tax a few other employee benefits that employees receive that they used to get for free at the hospital, at the church, at wherever. Now they're going to have to pay a tax on it. And the government wants the money from the churches. And that's what's going to happen. So the lobbying for the churches is going to have to start cranking up to try to get them exempt again, because this thing's a certified disaster. Nonprofit organizations, Christians and not, provide staggering numbers of services to people, disadvantaged youth, the underprivileged medically, homelessness. I mean, you name it. Just Thanksgiving, there were nonprofit organizations all over the Maricopa County that were giving out free turkeys and free meals. And they're going to have to start paying taxes. I mean, this thing could spiral into a catastrophic disaster. And churches are already facing record low donations, and numerous churches are closing. The devil has come for us, just like I said he would.
The views expressed on this program are those of the host and not necessarily those of staff, management, or ownership. This program was sponsored by Michael W. Smith.